You know, history is absolutely filled with these incredible, tenacious fighters. I'm talking about the people who carved out entire kingdoms against impossible odds, only to be, well, kind of erased by the bigger empires that came later. Today, we're pulling one of those stories from the shadows. We're telling the story of a man who became the last sovereign of his nation.
And check out this quote. When you hear this gladiator of his time, you're probably thinking of some Roman emperor, right? Nope, this actually describes a 19th century African ruler whose story has been almost completely lost until now. So who was he? Who was this gladiator, the last sovereign of Mereb? That's the region that would one day become the heartland of modern Eritrea. And that's the big question we're diving into today.
Now, everything we're about to talk about comes from one single, pretty incredible source. It's a biography of Ras Woldemichael Solomon written in Tigrinya back in 1999. This book is basically the key that unlocks his entire, nearly forgotten life.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're heading back to the Eritrean highlands in the mid-1800s. And let me tell you, it's a volatile place. We're talking shifting loyalties, brutal power struggles, and it's all building up to one critical battle that's going to decide the fate of the entire region.
So what were they all fighting over? The prize was Asmara. And Asmara wasn't just some town. It was the undisputed economic and political hub of the highlands. If you controlled Asmara, you basically controlled the destiny of the entire region. Simple as that.
And this whole conflict really boiled down to a fierce rivalry between two powerful clans. In one corner, you had the ruling clan, the Tsia Zega, led by a formidable warlord named Digiat Halu. And in the other corner, the challenger from the Ha-Zega clan, and that's our guy, Woldemichael Solomon.
But Woldemichael's journey to the top wasn't some straight, easy line. Actually, his story of conquest begins not with a glorious victory, but with a really crushing defeat.
The first big showdown between these two chiefs went down in Eritrea, which is a northern suburb of Asmara. This was it, the moment of truth, the first real test of Woldemichael's ambition. And the outcome? It was brutal, and it was clear. Woldemichael was defeated. Giat Helolu was victorious, cementing his control. At this point, our future sovereign was on the losing side of history.
But here's the thing. That defeat, it wasn't the end of his story, not even close. In fact, it was just the beginning. What happens next is one of those dramatic comebacks that totally reshapes the balance of power and forges Woldemichael's legacy.
After retreating and completely reorganizing his troops, Woldemichael gets ready for a second chance. The two rivals meet again, this time for a decisive battle near a place called Mai Bela.
And this time, the result was a total 180. Woldemichael's forces were victorious. His rival, Digiat Halu, was actually killed in the battle. With him gone and his army defeated, there was a massive power vacuum, and it was Woldemichael's for the taking.
But you know how it goes. A local victory puts you on a much, much bigger map. His success immediately caught the attention of the Ethiopian emperor, Yohannes IV, who saw this new, powerful warlord as a serious threat. So the emperor sends this massive imperial army into the highlands with one single mission: overthrow Woldemichael Solomon.
I mean, his rise was just meteoric. First, he takes out his local clan rival at Mai Bela. Then, in 1878, he faces the full might of the emperor's army and wins. He completely routs them. After that absolutely stunning victory, he becomes the unchallenged ruler of the highlands.
So, to mark this incredible achievement, he takes the title of Ras. And look, this wasn't just some fancy new name. It was the most senior title a regional ruler could possibly hold. Think of it as being on par with a European duke. He wasn't just a clan chief anymore. No way. He was a sovereign prince.
But reaching the top of the mountain didn't exactly bring peace and quiet. Instead, it thrust Ras Woldemichael into a brand new, and honestly, a far more dangerous game. This was a high-stakes gamble for survival on the geopolitical stage.
Suddenly, he was surrounded. From the west, you had raids coming in from the Mahdists in Sudan. From the south, the threat from the Tigrayans in the Ethiopian Empire was always there. And now, from the east, a new colonial power, the Italians, were showing up on the Red Sea shores. His entire rule just became this dizzying game of shifting alliances and betrayals.
And that brings us right back to that powerful quote from his biography. It just perfectly captures the reality of his reign, doesn't it? The ups and downs. That was his constant battle for survival against these huge, encroaching empires. He was a gladiator, fighting in an arena of collapsing kingdoms.
Which leads us with a final thought, a really provocative question. Woldemichael Solomon is remembered as the last sovereign of his people. But his story really forces us to ask, in an age of these huge, unstoppable empires, what does it truly mean to be the last one standing? What does that even look like?